want to extend thanks to everyone for taking the time today to be able to tune into this briefing. Today, we're here to talk about the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub community briefing. My name is Emmanuel. I'm your facilitator for today. I'm joined today by colleagues from OCED and from the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub. And we're all here today to talk to you a bit about the activities that are beginning in your region. My colleagues will introduce themselves in just a bit. In the meantime, I do want to alert you to just a few options that are available for this webinar. You can turn on live captions by clicking on Show Captions in the control panel at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. You can also access Spanish or American Sign Language interpretation by clicking on the interpretation button. This webinar today will be recorded, and the slides and the recording will both be published on OCED's website. As many of you are aware, next slide, please. I'm sorry. As many of you are aware, the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, or OCED, announced the selection of 7 regional clean hydrogen hubs. In October 2023, they began negotiations, and after many months, on November 20th, OCED awarded the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub, led by HyVelocity, with $22 million to begin phase 1 activities, which could result in up to $1.2 billion of total federal cost share over time. DOE and HyVelocity are here to provide an update on the hub, to speak to the project's information, and to lay out opportunities that may help to shape your community's energy future. So today you will all have an opportunity to engage with DOE and the project partners involved in these hubs during the Q&A at the end of the session. Next slide, please. As mentioned, my name is Emmanuel. I'm a facilitator, so I'm not formally a part of the OCED team or HyVelocity or the hub, but I'm here today just to help to make sure that your perspectives are presented in a way that are fair and balanced within this conversation. And I'd like to turn it over to folks to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Josh Tomlin, OCED's Demonstration Project Manager for the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub. Danielle?
Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Moon. I'm the Stakeholder Engagement Specialist for Hydrogen Hubs for OCED. I'll pass it to Ted.
Hello, everyone. My name's Ted Barnes. I'm a Senior Director in the Low Carbon Energy Solutions Group here at GTI Energy and serving as the Program Manager today for HyVelocity. And Doug?
Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Bannerman. I'm Senior Manager for Community Benefits for the HyVelocity Hub.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone, and thanks for being with us today. Next slide, please. I'd like to quickly review our agenda. So first, we're going to hear from the OCED team. They're going to describe the project management and oversight approach used by OCED in this particular endeavor, and we'll provide some resources and next steps related to engagement and how to stay involved with this project and opportunities for community and stakeholder input. Then we're going to hear from the HyVelocity team. They'll provide an overview of the project and community benefits as well. And then we'll move into our Q&A session. During that Q&A session, we're going to do our best to address as many questions that you all have. So at any point in time during today's briefing, if you have a question, please feel free to click on the Q&A button. Also on the control panel in Zoom, you can type in text and enter in your question. You can also like or upvote other people's questions if you think we should prioritize them in the discussion. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn things back over to our OCED team, and Josh is going to lead us.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Next slide, please. So Congress provided funding through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act to help fund clean energy demonstration projects, including the hydrogen hubs. Typically, OCED funds up to 50% of the costs for a given project in order to deliver clean energy technology demonstration projects at scale in partnership with the private sector. Core to our office's work is an emphasis on equity. We know we cannot get to a decarbonized energy system without working closely with the involved communities, and that is why it is critical we hear your questions and concerns. Community input not only shapes the specific projects OCED funds, but also shapes our comprehensive approach to building out the clean energy industry. Your community can be a part of this. Next slide, please. This slide captures the OCED portfolio at a high level. We are investing more than $25 billion in a variety of pathways and technologies central to achieving our clean energy future. For example, in addition to the H2 Hubs program that we are discussing with you today, our portfolio includes investments in long-duration energy storage and carbon management, as well as funding for clean energy projects in rural and remote areas in on current and former mine land. The bipartisan infrastructure law provided DOE with $8 billion in funding to develop regional H2 hubs and accelerate the commercial scale deployment of low-cost clean hydrogen. We allocated up to $7 billion of federal funds for 7 hydrogen hubs in different regions around the country. A portion of the H2 Hubs funding is for a demand-side initiative to ensure that both producers and end users in the H2 Hubs have the market certainty they need during their early years of production to unlock critical private investment. Hydrogen is a versatile fuel that can be produced from diverse domestic and clean energy resources, including wind, solar, and nuclear energy, or by using natural gas while capturing and permanently storing resulting carbon emissions. Hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe, has unique characteristics as an energy carrier that make it the best option to decarbonize energy-intensive heavy industry and support heavy-duty transportation. Hydrogen is the best option to decarbonize traditionally highly polluting industries because it can replace fossil fuels that create carbon dioxide and other pollution when burned. So instead of burning fossil fuels, we can use hydrogen, which only makes water when used to make energy. Hydrogen's versatile end use makes it an important component to achieve a carbon-free economy by 2050. And the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, sometimes referred to as Bill, and the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, both include significant funding for clean energy, including hydrogen, as well as other technologies and pathways. Hydrogen is just one of many clean energy demonstrations DOE is investing in. The 7 selected H2 hubs will catalyze billions of dollars in private investment and create tens of thousands of good-paying jobs. Next slide, please. I know you're here to learn more about the Gulf Coast Hub, but it is helpful to show the landscape of H2 Hub selectees and remind folks that a big goal of these hubs is to catalyze a national network of clean hydrogen infrastructure to reduce pollution and carbon emissions. This map shows an overview of the 7 selected regional clean hydrogen hub projects. The selections were diverse in terms of their hydrogen feedstock, end use, the total miles and states spanned, and the size of the various projects. Next slide, please. So here are a couple of overall statistics on the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub. This federal investment of up to $1.2 billion will be matched by recipients to leverage billions of dollars to strengthen local economies, create and maintain thousands of high-quality jobs, and slash harmful emissions that jeopardize public health and ecosystems. The Gulf Coast Hub plans to produce clean hydrogen from both water through electrolysis and from natural gas, while utilizing carbon capture and storage. Planned end uses include fuel cell electric trucks, industrial processes, ammonia production, refining, and petrochemical production of marine fuel. The hub also proposes to develop connective infrastructure, pipelines. These proposed investments in clean hydrogen aim to catalyze regional decarbonization solutions and contribute to lifting off the U.S. National Clean Hydrogen Network. HyV is also dedicated to ensuring benefits flow directly to impacted communities, creating tens of thousands of new quality jobs and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This slide, next slide, please. This slide details OCED's robust project management approach, oversight, and this is done through a phased approach with a go, no-go point before each phase. This means that a project must meet the agreed upon deliverables for that phase before they can unlock the next chunk of funding. This ensures that taxpayer dollars are properly managed. I want to point out that the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub is currently at the start of phase 1, and only a portion of the funding has been awarded. Most of the money won't go out the door until the phase 3, which is the construction phase. The projects within this hub can move through the phases on somewhat independent timelines. Some could take up to 18 months. Now, my colleague Danielle will cover some additional important points.
Thanks, Josh. So as Josh mentioned in the importance of community benefits and OCED's oversight role, I'll be going over how OCED prioritizes community benefits. All of OCED's programs, including the hydrogen programs, are required to have community benefits plans, or CBPs. And CBPs have 4 interdependent parts. First, community and labor engagement, which seeks to involve those impacted in decisions that affect them. So creating projects in response to workers on the ground. Second is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, or DEIA, which seeks to help build a clean energy economy reflective of all Americans. So that ensures equitable access to good, clean energy jobs. Third is investing in the American workforce. The focus of this is to help build the skilled long-term workforce needed to power the energy transition. So creating quality and sustainable jobs. And finally, the Justice 40 initiative, which creates a goal that 40% of all overall benefits of certain federal investments, including those in clean energy like hydrogen, flow to disadvantaged communities. While each of our projects are unique, all must have robust activities in these 4 areas. I also want to highlight that these commitments are intended to evolve in response to community and worker input on the ground, and will be assessed at each phase as part of OCED's go, no go decision points. So this is part of the phased approach that Josh mentioned earlier. Each hub was required to develop a CBP to make sure that local communities and workers are engaged in these projects from the outset and receive concrete benefits. And OCED will provide robust project management oversight of the plan implementation throughout the project lifecycle, as well as engagements at work. Next slide. So what does a strong community benefits commitments look like? So strong CBCs will have certain characteristics. So now that we're in phase 1, we're switching from plans to commitments. We required awardees to go beyond a vision or assessment and really bring them more into actionable and concrete goals, outcomes, and implementation steps supported by adequate money, people, and time resources. The awardee must include mechanisms for accountability to and transparency with impacted communities and propose clear metrics of success. Proposed actions must align with the needs and priorities of the impacted communities. Again, this is going back to incorporating feedback from communities and workers on the ground. The commitments must demonstrate how the project design will minimize and mitigate negative impacts and harm, especially to already overburdened and disadvantaged communities. They must have a plan for creating quality jobs, equitable access, and investing in workforce development. And these commitments should, again, evolve to reflect feedback from community and workers. So the CBP submitted at application have changed significantly. So community benefits commitments are a living document and must evolve in response to community and worker feedback over time. I also want to emphasize OCED's role in oversight over CBCs. So OCED might help to facilitate some engagements, but ultimately the recipient or the hub is going to be conducting most of the engagement on the ground. Next slide. So this section, I'll go over next steps and resources, including engagement opportunities. So for the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub, also called HyV, is again in phase 1. So they will begin to carry out the agreed upon activities over the next 18 months or so. So at this phase, we're really in the planning design phase, including community and labor engagement activities. So each hub is responsible for the planning and development of their respective facilities, while all hub collaborators will contribute to community benefits activities. Negotiations over the Phase 2 award will consider the status and quality of the implementation during Phase 1. So that includes community benefits commitments, again, making sure that the hubs have strong CDCs that include feedback from communities and workers on the ground. Another important requirement during this phase is OCED's funding actions are subject to compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, also called NEPA, and other requirements, including the National Historic Preservation Act and the Endangered Species Act. With all that being said, like Josh mentioned earlier, these projects are very early on in the planning phase. So it's really important that we get your input to help shape the hub and community benefits commitments for these projects that reflect what the communities really need. Now is really a great time to provide your feedback and ask questions. So now that we've gone over the importance of community benefits and input from you all, I want to make sure we take some time to go over our next engagement points and how to get in touch with us going forward. Next slide. So this slide shows you the path of engagement from when a project applies to OCED funding to when it is awarded and moves throughout the project management phases. At the center, there's a yellow star that marks where we are currently, which the project has been awarded, and in Phase 1. So that is largely a planning process and then moves along to different phases. Again, this is still very early stages, so these hubs will take many years to establish. So that means they'll have to go through several stages before any construction activities can start, which is in Phase 3. So this is a rough timeline because each phase or project will be different. Things will shift significantly during Phase 1 planning and Phase 2 negotiations. So this is just to give you a better sense of an overview of what to expect in each phase. Engagement will be ongoing throughout all of these phases, and one of DOE's oversight roles is to ensure that meaningful ongoing engagement continues regularly in each phase. As noted in this graphic, between each phase, DOE will assess the project's progress, including the quality of community benefits implementation, and will make a decision about whether the project should receive additional funding. And again, in addition to these mechanisms, all hubs are subject to NEPA, which includes robust public participation processes, and NEPA process will occur during Phase 1 and 2. Especially for those of you who are new to this, I highly recommend reviewing the resources we have available on background information on OCED hydrogen hubs and future virtual briefings like this one. Next slide. So these briefings are just an early but important step in broadening engagement among DOE, the selectees, and communities impacted by these projects. Information and details on all the hub-specific briefings is provided on our website. Also wanted to note, this is OCED's 5th post-award community briefing. We've listed out the previously held briefings here for California, Pacific Northwest, Appalachia, Midwest, and of course, today's briefing on Gulf Coast. Information about the previous briefings, including recordings and slides, are available on our local engagement webpage, and we'll also post future briefings there as applicable. So please stay tuned and make sure to check out our website as you continue to track our project activities. Next slide. All the hubs have their individual websites, so you can find the HyV website at HyVelocityHub.com. I highly encourage you all to check it out for their activities, announcements, and important project information. Next slide. And I'll end my presentation by sharing some resources on our OCED website on the Hubs program. So this includes important announcements, fact sheets, overview of selected projects. So please make sure to check these out, and we're always updating our information, so make sure to check it out regularly. And then the next slide is more resources listed. These will be available to you and linked in the local engagement webpage, so no need to write everything down right now. So with that, I'll pass it back to Emmanuel to hear from the Hy-V team, who will go over their project in more detail.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle. And congratulations to the Hy-V team on reaching this Phase 1 award milestone. OCED is looking forward to continuing its work with the hub over the course of Phase 1, which is expected to last up to 18 months as the hub carries out its planning and design activities, in addition to further community and labor engagement across Texas and the US Gulf Coast. So this is just the beginning of a much longer process here in Phase 1. The OCED award amount for Phase 1 is $22 million, which will be matched with hub investment for a total of $56 million estimated for Phase 1. The total OCED federal cost share amount over the life of the project, subject to the phased management approach that was just discussed, could be up to $1.2 billion with a hub cost share of at least as much. So now this is another opportunity for community involvement in helping to shape this project. So we want to use this time to help to familiarize folks with this particular hub and in ways to be able to get involved in different engagement activities during Phase 1. So let's begin by talking about the proposed project plan at a high level. So Ted, great to have you with us. Can you tell us a bit about Hy-V as an initiative and just help to ground us here?
Sure, of course. Thanks so much, Manuel. Thanks, Josh and Danielle and the whole OCED team. HyVelocity is so excited to be where we are today. As been said, if you look at that roadmap that was put up, we are just at the starting point, and we're excited, and there's so much more to come, and so happy to be able to share all the information on our hub. And so at a high level, HyVelocity is an industry-led hub. So it has 6 core industry partners: AES Corporation, Air Liquide, Chevron, ExxonMobil, MHI Hydrogen Infrastructure, and Ørsted. And then HyVelocity is administrated by GTI Energy and includes many collaborating organizations, some core members: University of Texas at Austin, Center for Houston's Future, and the Houston Advanced Research Council, or HARC. HyVelocity also has more than 90 supporters from industry, community engagement, labor organization, nonprofits, academic, and state and local governments, all working together to make this program move forward.
All right, definitely appreciate that overview. During this portion of our discussion, we want to talk a bit about technology and about the community benefit plan as well. Can we begin with technology deployment? Can you talk about the hub's vision in terms of technology deployment?
Sure. So by creating a balanced portfolio of producers and consumers, Hy-V is aiming to become the largest hydrogen hub in the nation, while also creating positive and durable impacts for Gulf Coast communities. And so through its core projects, our hub proposes to produce clean hydrogen, both from water through electrolysis and from natural gas while utilizing carbon capture and storage. And we also propose to develop connective pipeline infrastructure. The hub proposes to use this clean hydrogen for a wide variety of end uses, from things like fuel cell electric trucks, industrial processes, ammonia production, refining and petrochemical production, and marine fuel. And the introduction of clean hydrogen into these industries is estimated to reduce CO2 emissions by up to 7 million metric tons per year. And so these investments in clean hydrogen aim to catalyze regional decarbonization solutions and contribute to lifting off the U.S. national hydrogen network. And we're just really excited to be able to do this full ecosystem through the hub program, the production, connective infrastructure to end use, tied together with all the community benefits.
Yeah, I know folks are very interested in better understanding sort of where it is that these projects are anticipated to hit home. Can you talk more about proposed project locations and any details that you can share about the specific projects envisioned within the hub's activities?
Yes, of course. Very happy to get to talk more about the projects now. As we said, we're in the early stages of planning, but we love to be able to kind of share the vision and what the hub is proposing. At a high level, HyVelocity's industry partners are determining potential siting and facility options throughout the region, with proposed sites centered in the Houston region and stretching across Texas and the Gulf Coast. And so now to kind of get into some of my favorite part, the technical details of each of the projects, be able to talk through some of these plans. I'll start, just kind of going across these 7 projects left to right. Bayou Green Hydrogen. This is an AES program. AES plans to build a new electrolytic clean hydrogen production plant in Harris County, Texas. It'll be near the Houston Ship Channel and in the heart of the Houston Industrial Corridor. So it'll further support an already established and robust hydrogen ecosystem that exists in this region today. The facility will be designed to provide an estimated nameplate capacity of up to 175 metric tons per day, and that'll be powered by renewable electricity. Beyond that, the next one here, the Star E-Methanol project by Ørsted. Ørsted is planning to produce an initial target of 160 metric tons per day of clean hydrogen, utilizing either PEM or alkaline electrolysis. And it'll be located in the Texas Gulf Coast region, powered by approximately 1.5 gigawatts of solar and land-based wind. This will be Ørsted's first Power-to-X project in the United States, and Ørsted is proposing to use this hydrogen to create e-methanol. This will be for use in typically fossil fuel reliant industries, things like shipping. This e-methanol in these industries could reduce greenhouse gases, from equivalent maritime shipping fuels by more than 90%. It can reduce sulfur oxide, so SOx emissions, by up to 99%, reduce NOx emissions by up to 80%, and PM, particulate matter emissions, reduced by up to 95%. The next project here, Project Zeus. This is a collaboration between Air Liquide and project partner Equistar, which is a subsidiary of LyondellBasell. They propose a joint project in the Houston area. Air Liquide is aiming to construct a clean hydrogen pipeline to an Equistar chemical manufacturing facility. And Equistar plans to retrofit its plant equipment to utilize this clean hydrogen as a fuel source. And through this joint project, Air Liquide and Equistar could reduce greenhouse gas emission at that facility while demonstrating the viability of using clean hydrogen as fuel in furnaces. And so this is really a kind of a critical lever for achieving net zero emissions in chemicals and other hard to abate industrial sectors. Next project here is called Project Mercury. It's another Air Liquide program. In this one, Air Liquide plans to build and operate a clean hydrogen liquefaction facility, so making liquid H2. And this will be in the Texas Triangle area and capable of producing up to 30 metric tons per day of clean liquid hydrogen. The facility, which will feature on-site storage and multiple bays for distributing the LH2, this would support the region's future fueling stations or other liquid hydrogen customers. When I say fueling stations, transportation, vehicle fueling stations. And with a focus on the heavy-duty sector, and one of the main reasons there is that the heavy-duty transportation sector is one of the largest GHG emitting sector uses in the U.S. And so trying to target reductions in key hard to decarbonize industries like that. Next one on the list here, Crescent Bayou. This is a Chevron program. Chevron's planning to build clean hydrogen production facility that uses natural gas as a feedstock, with plans to capture at least 95% of CO2 emissions. Site evaluation on the U.S. Gulf Coast, with a prioritization on Louisiana and Texas, is currently in progress. Chevron would transport and sequester the captured CO2 in nearby geologic formations. The project proposes to produce up to 700 metric tons per day of clean hydrogen, which would be used to, or which would be, essentially converted to up to 4,000 metric tons per day of low carbon ammonia. Next, the hydrogen pipeline by ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil is evaluating low carbon hydrogen pipeline infrastructure build to connect production facilities to the demand centers. And this is really a foundational step for low carbon and safe transport of hydrogen. The hydrogen produced in the greater Houston region, being able to safely and low cost move it from production site to end users. Additional details on the potential size, route, and capacity of the pipelines, all of those types of engineering details will be continued to be worked and defined during the planning phase of the project. And the last program here is a Morning Hawk project. This is by MHI Hydrogen Infrastructure, a subsidiary of Mitsubishi Power Americas. They plan to develop an electrolytic production plant capable of producing up to 240 metric tons per day, nameplate capacity. And this will be located in Duval County, down towards Corpus area. And this project plans to procure renewable energy from a third party or by producing clean power on site. And then, having gone through all of this, as Danielle and others have pointed out, there's a lot of references, a lot more material on OCED's website with a fact sheet there, and then HyVelocityHub.com as well. So thank you very much. So glad to share some good project details. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. We have a lot of questions on the technology. Before we move on, is there any way you could help to specify? I know a lot of these say clean hydrogen. There are some references to renewable energy. Can you give us a feel for, which of these projects are powered by renewable sources and, whether or not that's existing renewables or new renewables? We'd love to get a little bit of clarity there before we move on quickly.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So as we said, it's very early in the project planning phase. And so there's a lot of work to be done. Specific feedstock sourcing is a key part of what phase one will do. That being said, all of the electrolytic, meaning using electricity to split water and create hydrogen, all of the electrolytic programs will be focused on wind and solar as that feedstock, as the clean electrons for the electrolytic process. To highlight that AES, OCED, and Morning Hawk, the MHI H2I programs are electrolytic hydrogen projects. So hopefully that provides some detail. I apologize if I missed any of the other parts of the question. But.
That's okay. We're going to have our full Q&A. So, we'll keep moving forward for now, and we'll try to address as many of those questions during the Q&A. So hoping to hit some relevant points while we have the slide up here. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about community benefits commitments. So we know these are a key component of OCED's project management and oversight process, and a key determinant as to whether or not the hub continues to progress through the various stages of federal funding. So these community benefits commitments are meant to be updated at the end of each phase to reflect key learnings and developments as the project continues to grow in its specificity, but also as community feedback is collected and incorporated. We'd like to better understand the hub's commitments, especially in the 4 different core policy priority areas for community benefits plans that have been established by DOE. So we're going to walk through those one by one and talk about them. So let's begin with community and labor engagements. Doug, thanks for being with us. What can you share about the hub's commitments related to community and labor engagement?
Well, thanks for having us, and thank you for the question. I guess in particular to labor and workforce engagement. So, HyVelocity's industry partners are going to start by engaging with building and construction trades trade unions to determine plans to make sure that by the time we start construction, we have a skilled and trained workforce in place. The goal for this engagement is to advance progress toward negotiations of pre-hire collective bargaining agreements, such as project labor agreements, and to have those in place as we move into additional phases of the project. Also, once project sites are selected, HyVelocity's industry partners will also consult with communities to jointly evaluate the benefits and potential use of community benefits agreements.
Okay, so I wanted to take a moment to clarify. You said once sites are selected, so it sounds as though you've presented a lot of information about different project partners and particular projects, but it sounds like specific locations have yet to be identified. Is that the case?
Well, I think as Ted talked about in his presentation, we're very early days. We are just one month into funding, and I think that's sort of a key part of what the feasibility phase of this project is for. I guess if I can move on to sort of some of the other points.
Please.
Actually, I may just back up here. Danielle gave some really fantastic points that I think I just wanted to add to. I think the community benefits plan is really this great structure that the DOE has put in place and given us, very much aligning with, I think, what global best practices around social performance are. But at the end of the day, what it really does is it enables project sponsors, communities, labor organizations, and other stakeholders to collectively determine the benefits that are going to flow from these projects. And I think that's an element that we're really excited about. So kind of the role that I play. So we will have something that's called the HyVelocity Community Benefits Office. And obviously, again, early days, we're just gearing up. But the point of the Community Benefits Planning Office will be to coordinate CBP activities, to help support the execution of plans developed by regional committees, which I'd like to touch on in a second. And then, of course, probably one of the most important parts, as Daniel mentioned around transparency, is to report results out to host communities and the DOE. So that community planning, so many acronyms, the Community Benefits Planning Office, or CBPO as we're calling it, will be comprised of GTI Energy, Houston Advanced Research Center, and University of Texas at Austin. One of the first things that we will be doing, essentially starting day one and probably over the whole course of phase one, is starting to conduct two-way engagement with a number of stakeholders. So again, communities, labor and workforce organizations, and other local stakeholders to try and identify points across sort of all phases of the project. So from planning, development to construction and operations, where there's an opportunity for those organizations to influence decisions and agreements. And kind of our whole goal here with engagement is obviously to build trust. We also want to understand diverse perspectives, address concerns, and ultimately deliver tangible benefits to communities. If I can, I would like to switch gears a little bit. And I think there's a slide here that we have of the community advisory mechanisms. There we go. So this is a fantastic governance structure that we are putting into place, and I think we're kind of excited about this. So just sort of want to walk through this a little bit for folks who are listening to us. So at the hub level, the Community Advisory Board will evaluate and endorse community benefits plan initiatives and put those before HyVelocity's board for approval. So that CAB will be comprised of representatives from community organizations, labor and workforce organizations, and CBP representatives from our industry partners. So the point there too is with input from regional communities, what the CAB will primarily be doing is making recommendations regarding hub-wide strategic initiatives and funding opportunities. So at this next level, community advisory committees and workforce advisory committees will work as a hub-wide advisory body to provide recommendations and inform cross-cutting strategic initiatives and deliverables. So they'll be kind of like, in a way, the heart and soul of sort of what you see here on this slide. And then finally, at the project level, community benefits hubs, which will serve geographic areas where projects have been proposed, will be the primary point of contact for local community members. So the idea here is CBHs will invite community members to engage with local project teams and HyVelocity leadership to discuss activities throughout the construction and operations phases where there might be impacts to communities. The other thing that's really going to happen here too is it'll be an opportunity for communities to be able to propose plans to make sure that benefits flow effectively to disadvantaged fence line communities. So an important point here too is the CBHs will work with communities to determine the representation on these organizations and have a transparent community nomination and approval process.
Okay, fantastic. I appreciate that description. I think that's helpful to better understand this
Yeah.
overall regional and local approach. I'm wondering about when you talk about workforce and labor engagement, can you describe any efforts that are being made to move those discussions towards concrete agreements?
Well, I think as I said, again, early days. So I don't think anyone has progressed far. But the idea is, as high velocities industry partners start to engage with labor and workforce organizations, I think the goal here is to try and advance progress toward negotiations of pre-hire collective bargaining agreements. So I think what you'll see as an outcome of those discussions are things like project labor agreements, community workforce agreements, or some kind of collective agreements that will govern different phases of the plan. Um, and we always like to, if I can shift gears and talk a little bit about benefits. None of this is sort of going to happen magically. I think one of the fantastic things that we have in a project like this is that the partners have really committed to creating jobs programs that are designed to help prepare or upskill workers for what we really see as this, very exciting and growing clean energy economy. High Velocity alone is intending to create 45,000 quality jobs over the lifetime of the project. The thing is, like, we won't get there by ourselves, though. And so, one of the things that we will be doing early on is trying to identify local programs and partners who can support the hub and create pathways to employment. The particular focus on groups such as disadvantaged communities, those who may be facing potential displacement from their current jobs, or others facing other employment barriers. So in addition to staffing plans, the projects will develop initial goals for quality job creation, share of hours worked by participants in registered apprentice programs, and funding for workforce development. So we're obviously very excited to see some of this start to get into action.
Okay, I want to follow up quickly. You mentioned sort of diversity, one of the words you just used, and I wanted to
Yeah.
take a moment to explore the hub's intentions and plans just around the Biden administration's Justice 40 initiative and efforts related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Now, these are core parts of community benefits from OCED's perspective. Can you talk a bit about the hub's plan in relation to things like J40, diversity, and these other aspects?
Oh, very, very, very happy to. So starting at the top, so High Velocity and its partners plan to collect community input and make sure that expectations and perspectives are reflected in whatever Justice 40 plans that we create. The initial Justice 40 assessment and implementation strategy is going to look at a lot of factors. But one of the things that it'll initially do is assess like existing community burdens and needs, try to estimate potential impacts of all the projects, estimate the flow of benefits, and then propose mitigation, monitoring, and tracking measures. We've already talked about some of the benefits that will flow from the project, but some of the specific J40 benefits that we're hoping to see flow from this project include job creation, training, career opportunities, and then things like reduction in air pollution at the local level. So the initial Justice 40 implementation and strategy plan will look at a kind of a variety of impacts as well. So things like water use, safety, and then other relevant social, economic, and environmental factors. Coming back to this idea around transparency, to monitor progress, HyVelocity plans to develop and publish a platform that reports project information and data and helps to integrate some of the things we've talked about that will come from our Justice 40 tracking system. So we'll be reporting information and metrics around things like community and labor engagement, workforce development, DEIA, and Justice 40 initiatives. And then to kind of answer the other questions sort of specifically about DEIA, our efforts are also going to include the development of training best practices and goals. And the idea here really is to try and help our project partners and the project develop a workforce and a supply chain that's representative of surrounding and fence-line communities.
All right, Doug, appreciate that overview. That's really helpful. We do want to try to jump into our Q&A as quickly as possible. We have lots of questions. We've tried to work some of them in the conversation so far. But at this point, we're going to invite our past speakers to come back on video, and we're going to move to our Q&A session. Next slide, please. I think many of you are already familiar with our ground rules. I appreciate all the questions that have come in. It is helpful. We are tracking and recording all of the text of the questions that come in. So OCED and the HyVelocity team have that for their consideration even after this webinar has ended. We always have time constraints when we come to these meetings, and so we won't be able to work through each question verbatim as asked one by one. But we have been going through the questions as they've been coming in to better understand the different topics and the variety of concerns that have come up. And we're going to try to address as many of them as we can in the time that we have. So I'd like to start with topics around community engagement. There was a comment during the presentation earlier that the hub was basically industrially driven to an extent. A lot of the projects were and based on the industrial impact that's possible. But it seems that there are concerns from the community that they are secondary in consideration to the industrial stakeholders. It'd be great to better understand the way that the voice of the community has helped to shape the hub and its projects to date. Can you speak about any instances where you've heard feedback from the community and you've incorporated that and changed some aspect of the hub's plan or its execution?
Well, maybe I can jump in here and then would ask Ted to maybe answer. You know, again, we're very early, and this is the feasibility stage. So I don't think, you know, the designs are probably not at a point where they would be already ready to be redesigned based on community impact. But I think people are starting to raise, you know, questions already. I mean, even at a very high level, like some of the questions are about, you know, jobs, like how many jobs do you think will be created? When will the jobs be available? But I think, and then more closer to home, I think, you know, hydrogen is absolutely not new. We've had hydrogen in Texas, for example, for decades, but people ask questions about hydrogen safety. And I think we've tried as best as possible to start to answer some of those concerns, to be able to you know, sort of proactively deflect any concerns that people may have that this kind of a facility may be, you know, coming into their area, and should they be concerned or not? And obviously the answer is not.
Well, I think please,
sorry.
please.
I was just gonna add on to what Doug was saying. You know, I think a lot of this is, you know, realizing that we're beginning planning now, and so a lot of this is being created now. And to speak to kind of what we've heard and how it's helped set the structure of where we are, you know, I think a lot of what we heard or what we have learned is that there's a lot we don't know yet, And so we haven't tried to set the hard deliverables for metrics, for benefits, for issues in communities, because we haven't been through this process yet. And so this process and the structure that Doug just talked through is really to take that step back and gather that input from the community to be able to learn benefits and learn impacts. And so not to come into this with preconceived answers already. So that's a big part of how this structure was created, really, is to make sure we can take this step back and take the time to build up those targets and goals.
I think that's a key point, because part of what I'm seeing from the messages that are coming in is that the community is not just concerned about, benefits, risks, and jobs, but concerned with ensuring that they are a key partner in every step of the process, fully participating and making decisions alongside the project team. And you all have proposed a structure for being able to make that happen, with input at different levels. Can you speak a bit about the way that participation in those various community committees and structures will take place? How do folks get involved? What is the process like for, selecting who gets to be a part of a committee and who doesn't get to be a part of a committee?
That sounds like another one for me. Well, I kind of ran over this, and I apologize if maybe we went over it maybe a little bit too quickly. But so I'll just take one for example. So we were talking about, like, at the project level, there'll be community benefits hubs. So that will be, a group of community members sort of representing the rest of their community. So again, this is sort of like an idea on paper. We haven't executed against it, but there will be a governance structure around this, and we will work with communities to figure out how should people be nominated for a body like that, and then make sure that the nomination process, the terms for how long people should serve on these sorts of boards or committees, how long should that be, and sort of the entire process about how people find out about these opportunities, how they get nominated, how they participate, what their role would be, is clear. And then it'll essentially work from that grassroots level up to what I was talking about, of having a community benefits group at the hub level, kind of comprised of community groups, labor organizations, and CBP leads from our industry partners. So so I guess, just to reiterate, we'll just we will, I shouldn't say make sure, we will have a very clear governance model for how those organizations work.
Okay, appreciate that clarification. There were some concerns around transparency that have been expressed by the community as well. So we know this is the beginning of sort of the official relationship between HyVelocity and DOE. Folks are interested in better understanding what information is going to be shared from this point in time. So there have been many communications that have taken place between the hub and the federal government. There was a full application that was submitted. There's been talk of the community benefit plan and its related commitments. And many of these things the community has not had the opportunity to see. And it is very difficult to make informed decisions as a community without having full information available. So moving forward from this point in time, can you speak a bit about the type of information that's going to be made available at this point, where people can go to find that information, and when they should expect that as well?
Sure. I'm happy to jump in, and I don't know if Josh or Danielle on the OCED side, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts there too, but thanks for kind of laying that all out there, Emmanuel. There's no doubt the proposal process we've gone through, there's been an evolution and changes and really improvements, to the whole process and setting up of the structure to now. And so now we really are at that starting point where we're ready to start, enacting all, the plans that we're creating throughout phase one here. So where will information be shared? Events like this will be touch points, but not the kind of the regular sharing. the HyVelocity Hub website will have our constant updates of as events get started. The OCED website, I won't speak for y'all, but there's good information on that site as well. And then that will all be built out and made more robust as we go through this process. So right now it's we're starting the process, and there really will that information will continue to be shared as it's developed, as we get these concrete plans in place. I will say, when will we start seeing real events on the calendar? And that this is kind of the most challenging time of year ever for getting things like this started. So over the Thanksgiving holiday and then winter break here, so it will be a little bit before there are maybe concrete calendar events, but they will be shared publicly. They will be integrated with communities and the like, and so we will provide those updates as they're created. But and please, Josh or Danielle, please jump in.
Yeah, I'll just chime in with a quick thought. So right now we are in early stage. I think it's been said before. We're planting a seed, and as it grows, we're going to have different forms of information to share and show. And as Ted mentioned, both the HyVelocity website and the engagement resources that have been posted in chat will be where we maintain and provide updated information.
Appreciate that. I know we're quickly running out of time. There was a suggestion here in the chat. Even as you all are planning to do more community engagement, there are many members of the community who are ready to talk about many of their concerns. And it'd be great if there's an opportunity for Ted and Doug and the team to respond to some of these community requests in meetings that they're willing to set up and engage with all of you on. I know we only have a minute left. There were some questions around technology, and I'm hoping we can quickly try to address maybe one of those. So you talked about the needs related to sourcing hydrogen and renewable energy. Many of these technologies also require a significant amount of water. Some of them require CO2. There are other inputs and potentially other impacts to the community as well. Can you talk about where some of these other resources are going to come from, especially as many of these communities are impacted by drought?
Sure. So absolutely, with all energy production, the feedstocks are a critical part of that. The intent of doing this in partnership with the DOE is to make sure that we spend a lot of time on full life cycle analysis for emissions, for feedstocks and the like. The intent, wherever possible, of course, for power, for electrolysis, as we've said before, using renewable power, solar and wind. Water, absolutely a constrained resource, definitely going to be a focus, using appropriate measures like doing water studies, evaluating needs and availability, and doing that hand in hand, and part of this planning process. So taking those steps just like we will on the community side, building those engineering technical steps up as the programs develop. But these are very challenging times and challenging amounts of energy to make. And so it's just going to be a lot of the hard work that gets done during this process. We'll be building that and making sure it's done in an appropriate manner.
Great. I want to say thanks for everyone for taking the time to be a part of this Q&A and for all the questions that were asked. We know that there is a great desire to continue these conversations, especially when there is sufficient time to dive into the details and really talk through all of these concerns that are at the forefront of everyone's mind. At this point, I'd like to turn things back over to Danielle for some closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Manuel. Although that's all the time we have for questions today, we want to thank you all for your interest in attending today's session in the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub. More information on the hub or additional questions or comments, you can reach us through the resources shown here. Reach out to us anytime, and we look forward to hearing from you, and thank you again for joining us today.